So I'm Luke Pearson. I'm the founding director of IndigenousX and IndigenousX Proprietary Limited.
Luke Pearson, first of all, congratulations on new family member.
Thank you.
How is that going to affect IndigenousX in the next couple of weeks or so?
Well, for the next few weeks, I guess it'll be a lot of my time will be a bit preoccupied looking after the bub, and I've taken a bit of time from work, and I've got some friends looking after a lot of the online side of things. But really, I think already it's just given me a lot more drive and a lot more purpose for what I do. We always do our things for our mob, and we think about our families and our communities and people we don't even know. But when you're looking at that little baby as well, and it's all for her. So.
Take us back to the beginning. When did the concept of IndigenousX come from, and how did it form and morph into what it is at the moment?
Yeah, so the start of it, I've been on Twitter a long time now, 6-7 years, and doesn't sound that long, but Twitter hasn't been around that long really. It was only around a few years, I think, when I signed up, and there was a pretty active core group of mob on there at the time, and we used to muck around a lot. We used to have a lot of fun, and we'd call people out when it needed to be called out, but most of it was just interacting with each other and having fun and saying what we felt needed to be said. And for whatever reason, I think I struck a chord with a bit of an audience and grew a follower base pretty quickly. And I got to about 5,000 followers and started to feel that I wanted to do more, and not just that I wanted to do more, but that there was more that needed to be done that I don't think any one of us can ever do as an individual. A lot of what we'd talk about was the need for more diverse Indigenous voices in the media and in the national conversation, and me talking about that is one thing, but it's not showing that diversity. And I think the idea for IndigenousX to have a different Indigenous host take over the account each week really grew out of that, and the sense that I had this follower base of like I said, 4,500 followers I think when it started, and it was like I want to give more than what I personally can give to this audience. I feel Twitter was a great opportunity. I still think it's a great opportunity, a great platform, and so IndigenousX really just came out of wanting to share the enjoyment I got online, and wanted to share that with other people, and wanted to share it with the audience that had come along with it.
The concept that you were saying, getting somebody different every week to host the Twitter account, what are you expecting from these people? Are you expecting some differences? They make a difference? Obviously there's guidelines they need to meet and everything like that. Tell us about the criteria of selecting these people.
Well, it's really been as open-ended as we can possibly make it. So, the only real criteria is a Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander, and can you get to an internet for the week that you're hosting? Other than that, there isn't really much that we've put on it. We do have some policies about, not defaming people, no racial vilification, obvious things like that. But really it's about each individual just being themselves for that week and doing whatever they want to do with it. And so the idea of, celebrating the diversity of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people isn't put onto each individual. It's just you go there, you take it for a week, you be yourself, the next person will do the same, and so will the next and the next. And if you're a follower of the account, once you've followed for a few months, you start to see that diversity, and you start to appreciate that we're not a homogenous group. We don't all have the same political leanings. We don't have the same stories. We don't have the same, there's a lot of things that bind us all together, but there's a lot of things that make us who we are as individuals as well. And it was really just an opportunity to be yourself, have fun with it. That's pretty much all I say to people. We've still never said no to anyone who's asked to host.
How did you get involved with The Guardian?
They approached me. That was really humbling. So we've been going IndigenousX for 4 years. The partnership with The Guardian, I think, just celebrated its 3rd birthday. So they came on pretty early in the piece, and they just came and said, we like what you do. We're moving to Australia. This is just when they'd set up. So we were one of the first things when they launched The Guardian in Australia. They understood that, not being from Australia, that they wanted to come and do something different, and that they wanted to show that they actually could connect with Australian audiences and do something uniquely Australian, and they felt IndigenousX was a great way of showing that. And Yeah, for me it was funny. In the early talks when I first met with them, it was sort of like coming from overseas. I think they're actually better placed than a lot of Australian media because we've been here with Australian media from the start, and most of them haven't paid us much attention. It's been great. It's been great to see that change lately. The stuff with NITV, with ABC have just been knocking it out of the park. With Clever Man, the latest one, but they've had a whole string of shows. But for the most part, Australian media has never paid much attention or interest in actually, they might do a story on us, but they don't do much with us, and they don't have too many Indigenous people telling their stories themselves. And so, the Guardian saw this as an opportunity for them to help solidify themselves in Australia, and I saw it as a great opportunity for IndigenousX to help get our voices out there, and it's just gone along very happily for that. It's really happy with that partnership and the opportunities that have come out of that.
How do you see Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander media landscape at the moment, and where IndigenousX will be placed in that?
Yeah, well, I think you don't want to sort of big note yourself when you talk about it. I really do feel that IndigenousX has played a pretty solid part in the changing landscape that we've seen over the last sort of 4 or 5 years. And I think it's a really exciting time. We're seeing more and more people now go out on their own. Like, yourself, you've been around in media for a very long time, but carving out on your own, maintaining that independence and seeing a lot of young fellas come up now with the ambition and seeing what people like you and I and others are doing. When I started doing it, there was nothing like IndigenousX in a social media space to go, okay, I see how they're doing it, I'm going to build on that. So it was really just fumbling around, try anything, see what works, see what's good. But to know that the next lot coming up after us will be able to study what we've done and go, I see what they've missed and they're going to make it better than what we did. And I'm really excited by that. And you're also seeing that change now in mainstream media as well. Still maybe slower than we'd like, definitely slower than we'd like it to be, but they're starting to listen. And I think, IndigenousX, shows like Clever Man, black comedy, some of the stuff that's coming out now is sort of beating that really old adage within white mainstream media of no one cares, there's no audience for Indigenous voices, no one wants to know these stories unless they're the really sensational over the top stories. And we're proving that that's not the case, that we have a right to have our voices heard, even if they're not, just when we're protesting or just when there's horrific, atrocities going on, which those stories need to be told as well, of course, but everyday stories are just as important. When you look at mainstream television, they're not doing the most revolutionary stuff. Like you look at breakfast TV, like they're not saying anything that important. So why can't we be there telling our stories as well that might not be change the world stories, but are just about who we are and what we think on a given topic. And so, I'm really proud that IndigenousX has been a part of that journey, and I hope we'll continue through to the next phases. But, even if we disappeared, I'd be very proud that we were there at that pivotal time, and I'm really excited about what's going to grow out of it.
What sort of feedback do you get from Indigenous, non-Indigenous people about IndigenousX?
For the most part, people who know IndigenousX and who have been a part of that journey, overwhelmingly positive. There's still a lot of mob who don't know that we even exist. And still a lot of white followers and mob who don't know we exist. We've got almost 26,000 followers on Twitter, which is a really huge audience in that Twitter space. And Twitter have just come out and committed saying they want more Indigenous voices on the site, which is awesome, and I can't wait to see what they do with that. But it's still a pretty small space that we exist within. And a lot of people will know of things that we've done, but didn't know it was us who did them. And so, when I meet people and tell the stories, they're just like, wow, this is really amazing. And, just through something as simple as a rotating Twitter account, we've got the partnership with The Guardian, we've got another partnership with Start Some Good, which is a crowdfunding platform. We've raised well over $300,000 for other Indigenous projects through that site. And these are pretty significant achievements. We've had, whenever you read in the papers that there was a store who took a t-shirt off the shelves or a doll out of an airport, or, when the Macquarie Dictionary changed the definition in their dictionary, that was IndigenousX. Quite often behind the scenes or just on Twitter or just in an article on the website. But we get things done. And so people are pretty excited about that for the most part. And I think because we haven't, gone too far out of our way, we don't have big funders, we don't have big events, we don't do all the flash stuff. We just do it online and we get it done, and then we move on and we do the next thing. And so, yeah, I mean, the feedback that I get overwhelmingly positive and really humbling, but also really gratifying to know that there are some people out there who are really massive fans of IndigenousX and would bend over backwards for us and do, whenever we ask for any favours. And to know that you're not alone doing what you're doing, and you're not the only one who sees the world the way you see it, is really gratifying, really rewarding.
And the logo, explain the logo.
Yeah, so I'm not a designer by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm rocking the logo here. So this actually came out a conversation with an artist down in Melbourne, Nathan Patterson, who's won a few awards. I think had a couple of exhibitions now as well, and just a really solid fella. And I got talking to him on the phone, and I was just explaining, what IndigenousX is and what it represents, and it's about that diversity and not being tied to any one philosophy or any one school of thought, but is really about that X, that unknown quality. That for some people it's the Malcolm X, for some people it's X marks the spot, for some people it's the algebraic X, where you don't know the unknown quantity of X. What is X? And said, so I was talking to him about some of those ideas and didn't give him any real input in terms of what it would look like. I just talked to him about what it feels like to me. And as we were talking, he sketched this up just on a napkin and sent me a photo of it, and we got it turned into the design, and this has been our logo ever since, and I absolutely love it.
It is. It's good. It's almost as good as IndigiStream.
Yeah, now it's we'll put it up to an online poll.
Hey, good idea. I had to throw that one in there. But we talk about the changing face of the media and the role that IndigenousX could play in mainstream media as well. How do you see the changing face of media and where you're going with IndigenousX?
Yeah, I really want to focus more and more onto the website, and I think collaborating with other Indigenous media is really exciting for me. I do a fair few radio spots, and you do things to get your face out there, but doing interviews like this with yourself, they're those opportunities where it's like, if I can help you do what you're doing and you can help me do what I'm doing, and we can all go on that journey together. And so, I think at the start, like I said, we were the first ones there in that Twitter space, so it wasn't hard to be the best because we were the only. And so, I always want IndigenousX to take a lead in that space, but I'm not at all concerned about the idea that someone's going to come up with something better and overtake us. And that's actually what I look forward to seeing, and to watch that growth of the sector, and particularly in online media, but Indigenous media more broadly. Whatever it looks like and whatever shape it takes, we'll always be around. We'll always help out where we can. We'll always, tell any stories that we think I can bring something different to, or a new angle on, or and I write a lot myself, so sometimes I just need to vent, and so I'll always write. Anyone who's read my stuff knows I can put a few words out there when I need to. But yeah, for me, I just like the journey. I don't worry too much about the destination.
Cool. Anything you want to add?
What did I mention? So we've got I mentioned the Start Some Good stuff. Well, another big thing I'd really like us to move more and more into, and why I want to grow our audience online. I think, I'm always being cheeky on Twitter saying, follow IndigenousX, we want more followers. It's that as more and more crowdfunding sort of opportunities come up for other organisations out there, if we're going to be able to raise funds for community projects, for art projects, for education projects, for cultural projects, we're going to need those donations to come in. We're going to need those followers so that they can support these projects. And so that is something I've been putting a lot more thought into, and been working with Start Some Good and with my website guys. So that'll be the next phase of development on the site. There's a few other aspects to the site that I want to flesh out. I want to start having just some resource lists for people, because a lot of people come to us just saying, I'm really interested in learning about this, or I want to do whatever it is, and we respond to those one-to-one. So it would be really nice to have an FAQ section on the site, and to have website recommendations, and to have things that would free up my time and energy but still give people access to those resources. So I think more and more the IndigenousX website is becoming a go-to site. And it's great. I think there's a couple of other sites that particularly uni students and school students use when they're doing Indigenous research that aren't Indigenous run sites, and have some pretty dodgy stuff on them. And so, yeah, if we could step up and overtake some of those guys, I'd be really happy to become a go-to repository for a lot of that information.